Welcome, everybody. We're now going to have quite a brilliant session. It's Who's Up for Sharing What They Know. It's going to be hosted by the amazing Ben Bailey-Smith, who's held an audience of 500 million people at the Queen's Jubilee Party. He's joined on stage by J. Jones, Mr. C, and Esther Brown with Niels Leonard. Please welcome onto the stage. Thanks, buddy.
Hello. All right. Okay, so we're sharing creativity. These are our amazing guests. I'll introduce them properly in a minute. So I guess we know what that concept means pretty much. You know, my daughter, I got a 16-year-old, and she kept using the phrase gatekeeper a couple of days ago. In a conversation with a friend, I said, "What are you talking about?" And she was talking about her knowledge of all the Prets in London. Like, she knows all the Prets. She used to go to school in central London, now she goes in Victoria. So she knows a lot of Prets and she's obsessed with them. From a subscription that she had a couple years ago, right? She gave her a subscription as a gift. But when it ran out, she worked out that you could do a free trial if you have a different credit card number that you can attach to your phone number. So she took a different card of mine, got another free trial, extended it for a month. Then she took her mum's card, extended it for another month. And when she got her own bank account, she used her card, kept it going for 3 months, got free drinks for 3 months. And I was like, you know so many Prets, right? She's like, I know the ones with the best toilets, I know the ones with the best snacks, best vegan stuff. I was like, you should put that in an app or something like that, like, you know, like your guide to London's greatest Prets. She was like, no, I'm gatekeeping that shit. I'm not sharing it with anybody. I thought, wow, that's stingy, but I get it, you know? And what we wanted to dig into today was, is there a process of that gatekeeping going on right now that's blocking a new generation of creatives from getting into the industries that they're really passionate about, right? So we've tried to create a range here of experienced people, find out whether they are as selfish as my daughter or if they do share, and who inspired them, who brought them in, you know? So from the top, we've got, this is Niels Leonard. He's the founder of Uncommon Agency, the ad agency which won Agency of the Year 2020 and 2021. And then we have, Esther Brown, head of Soho Friends, part of Soho House that's working with the next generation of creatives. I have my friend and colleague, Mr. C, who's an amazing comedian and mentor at the School of Communication Arts. And another friend of mine, J. Jones, advertising creative director, is also a producer, writer, and director in the entertainment business. So we got a good kind of range. Give him a big warm round of applause, make him feel at home. So we'll kick off, we'll get into some specifics. We'll kick off with a sort of general question for all of you. We'll just go from left to right, which is, I mean, judging by what the concept we set up today, how essential would you guys say learning from experience or experienced people was to your career? And we'll start with you, Niels.
I'm in the hot seat, right? Like
you're in the hot seat.
Yeah,
okay. Well, I'll switch it up. We'll go back and forth. I'll start with you.
I was thinking about this before I came on, and I feel like the Mike Tyson quote, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face," is pretty relevant. I think you're comfortable, aren't you? And you think you know it all until shit goes wrong. And that happens quite a lot, certainly in the creative industry. And I think that's when you really go missing, you know, and you can lose the most precious thing in the world, which is time, when you don't have people around you. You know, you can make mistakes, but failing is not the problem. The problem is not learning. And so someone can put their arm around you and go, do you know what? This happened to me. They can share it with you. Someone once told me that you only really, really need poetry when you're in love, because it makes sense of it. I think that's true of advice and wisdom. You only really need it when you're in the shit. And I think, you know, it's critical. So there were moments in my life for sure where without mentors, I definitely would have just lost time and lost faith. So it's critical, you know.
Did you have the maturity to seek that out when you were young getting in the game?
Man, luck and energy, and I was, anyone who knows me will tell you I'm a ferocious, ambitious little shit. So I was desperate, you know, the desperation to not fail is there. So I would just reach out and make space for people. But if it's hard, if you're not comfortable doing that, it can be hard. You know, and you have got to invade people, and you have got to get in their face and go, my God, what have I done wrong here? And listen, really listen. You know, that's another skill that goes missing.
And presumably, whilst being super confident, developing humility at the same
100%.
time in order to be able to listen. Esther, did you have somebody, was there somebody there who was like, you know, Yoda for you, or?
I mean, you name me one great idea that hasn't been made better without the input of other people, right? You may have the most amazing, incredible ideas, but it's the people around you that help make those happen. If I look back at my career, every single person that's played a part in my change from advertising to client side, or the dark side as people in advertising call it, to now in hospitality, all of those people are still in my life. Every single one of them still plays a mentoring role in some way, shape, or form. So the thing for me really is, you know, you've got that idea, other people will make that idea better. So as amazing as you think your idea is, if you think you know it all, you really know nothing. The whole point of relationship building, mentors, is to take that amazing idea and make it off the scale. So my one piece of advice is all those relationships that you make, all those people that you meet, all those chance moments in a bus or in a cafe or at a Soho house, all of those moments will come back one day and you'll look back on them and think, I'm really glad I kind of came upon that time where I took time to speak to that person.
No, I love that. I love that. And Mr. C, you know, you're in two very different worlds that do have a amount of crossover. Was there someone there with comedy, and was there someone there with the mentoring? Because obviously it's part of your job in mentoring to do exactly what we're talking about, not to be like a closed book. Don't do what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. For myself, I think I did it all by myself. By the way, I didn't have anybody help me. Not really. I'm joking. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, for me in my comedy journey, first of all, starting off, I had Rudy Liquid, who literally took me under his wing and took me on the road with him, and kind of like made me see that comedy, the comedy roads were further and greater than what I actually thought when I started the comedy journey. Showed me so many different paths and ways I could earn money through comedy. I mentioned Felix Dexter before. Again, a guy who just spent time with me. Just having somebody of that status actually giving me their personal time meant a lot to me as well. So I think because I had that in the early days, I knew that this had to be part of my DNA as well. That because it was done to me, I need to do that to others. So again, from an early stage, I was mentoring other comedians in the process. With where I am at the School of Communication Arts, that role came about through the fact that I was teaching a lot of marketing and advertising students stand-up comedy. And because the dean at the school, Mark, who's an absolute brilliant visionary, was recognizing that his students were benefiting from this process, then he asked me to come on board as a mentor at the School of Communication Arts as well. And so now, again, the skills are crossed over into that other area. But again, it's so vital for people in the beginning of their journey to be mentored, but also for those people who've been through the journey to also mentor the new generation coming through as well.
Yeah, and Jay, are you... when you pass down advice, do you feel like this young whippersnapper is gonna be twice as good as at this job as what I am now, and feel threatened by it, or do you feel like it's just this ongoing cycle of? Well, can we check Jay's mic?
Take this one.
Thank you.
Yeah, I started my career with absolutely zero by way of qualifications. I started out as a runner in an art studio. So absolutely everything I've ever learned has been through the generosity of other people,
right,
and just being around people that I could kind of absorb stuff through. So I kind of feel the same way. I just kind of pass it on, really. There's just so much stuff that you pick up, by osmosis. It's not really, you're not kind of formally learning anything. You're just around and you're picking it up and you're applying it to your work. And yeah, I think I love the idea of continuing to, pay that forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful thing because often, like, I'll be asked, what if you could give me one piece of advice, what would it be? I never know what to say in that, because my journey was similar to yours, just sort of like chugging along on my own, just watching people and thinking, I want to do that, but I don't want to bother him. Do you know what I mean? I want to learn how to do that.
Yeah, there's I think probably 3 great pieces of advice I had. I suppose with a background in design as an art director, someone said all colours go with each other. Well, I thought, yeah, they do. That's kind of obvious, Like, the other was it's okay to start a sentence with "and," right? So that I probably use that about 20 times a week. It's just a kind of it's a journey, isn't it? And you just you pick up that stuff and you pass it on.
Let's dig into that concept of the journey. Like, Nils, when you look back, can you remember any particular, like, specific experiences where you thought, okay, maybe it was painful in the moment, but like you grew almost overnight because of that one experience? It doesn't have to be a bad one, could be a great one.
Yeah, no, well, when you said the latter bit, yeah, I remember that hot burn in your cheeks of embarrassment and failure and horrendousness. That's happened many, many times. The one I was going to talk about, though, was, like you, I hadn't had a proper education in that sense. I didn't go to uni or anything. I got lucky enough to get a job in an agency, and I was surrounded by people. And the one thing they showed me, which no one talks about, which dawned on me, is they sort of showed me how to live, not just work. So, like, I didn't get it. No, like, where I grew up, I didn't understand how to go to a restaurant and what rocket salad was. And I didn't understand, what a meeting was. Simple things. When do you ever learn what a meeting is? When does anyone sit you down and teach you that, right? So I learned lots of stuff about decorum and calm.
Interesting.
And like, I remember the figure, there's a guy called Simon Fairweather. He was a typographer at the time. I mean, he was a, raging prince of the night, but was really, really generous with his spirit and with his craft. But I learned, I remember looking back and learning, how to sit outside a restaurant without feeling conspicuous. and things like that. And I think that suddenly when you learn that, how to live creatively or live the way you want to, not just to park it in the office, people around you can teach you that. And that I just found that amazing, Even when you're surrounded by, we did a project with Nick Cave recently, who I, obviously really have a great admiration for. But the energy, never mind Nick and what he's accomplished, the energy of Nick and Warren and that whole team is contagious, it's calming, and it's wise. And I think that's what you get to conjure in a company with your culture, or you get to conjure as a person. It's not just what you say or the advice you dispense, it's how you live. And that's a massive lesson, I thought.
Yeah, that is big. And as you were speaking there, it started making me think about the leap that young people must have to take from leaving education to getting to a workplace such as yours. You obviously you work with a lot of young people. And I remember last time we spoke, you were talking about your own experience of early workplace experiences with some very funny stories. Can you speak a little bit on that crucial moment? You've left education, or perhaps even further education, and you're about to go into this workplace, about how daunting that is and what to expect and how to carry yourself.
Well, look, I think one of the biggest things that I can remember, if I'm trying to think way back to this time, what you're talking about, leaving school and starting work, was the first difference is dealing with, when you leave school or education, you're surrounded by young people, your kind of peer group, and that's what you're used to. And then you get thrown into this adult world where you've got to now kind of deal with all of the different, problems that adults solve, the reasons why adults are different with you. So you've got to learn all of that really quickly. So that was one of the first kind of challenges. Kind of, you feel like you're in a constant loop with your parents, basically. It's just like, you don't understand why these people are upset, why they're having all these different emotions and pressures, because their pressures are completely different than the pressures of school and education.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? In school and everybody understands, the pressures of school, the pressures of educating, but working environment is completely different. So when you get an adult in that situation who kind of like, again, takes you under their wings and kind of says to you, look, this is what you need to do, kid. You need to kind of, but most importantly, you have to now try and understand yourself, okay, where am I going on this journey now? What are the things that I need to really pick up quickly in order to become a valuable asset here? Because I think that's what it is as well. It's like understanding your value and what can you bring to this environment.
What if you're the least inexperienced person or the youngest person, but you've got the best idea or the most dynamic way of changing what's been the status quo in the business you've just gone into or the office you've just got into? Like, how would you broach that if you're the least senior person?
Well, you know what? I mean, I got a good story for that, because this is literally what I did in one of the companies that I was working for. Was that the job that I was doing was so soul destroying. But what I did was use modern technology, which was an Excel spreadsheet, to simplify it. And because I literally did that, I became this guru all of a sudden. And this was a job where I was a temp. And what it did, it gave me a position where now they can't afford to get rid of me. So what they did, they offered me a permanent role, a permanent job. But because I knew that I was the only one who could do this, it allowed me now to start bartering about what he was going to pay me to do this. And I had a sense of power, a sense of knowing my worth, and actually, demanding what I think I should be getting paid. And that's really empowering. So again, I think there's a generation of young people now who are really tapped into social media, who are tapped into modern technology, and you have got a wealth of experience and knowledge which has got a value, which a lot of people in working situations, they haven't got those skill sets, they haven't got that knowledge. So again, know your worth with it.
Yeah.
And
Or
don't
they're just
be
out the
afraid
loop. They're just too old. They just don't.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to kind of like say, look, this is what I'm bringing, this is what I'm going to do for the company, and this is to change what my knowledge and my expertise is going to bring, and this is the value to it, and therefore that's why you have to pay me a little bit more money.
Esther, what was your first job in the creative world, and can you speak a bit on how you felt? I mean, being a woman as well, you're probably going to be in a minority. Like, what were those earliest experiences
my
like?
first job coming out of university was in advertising. I took it because I thought, this will be fun. I had no idea what it was about. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I think, coming out of university, there's expectations on you. So my journey's been slightly different in the fact that I did go to school, I did go to university. I spent 4 years of my life probably just getting pissed, having a laugh. And I think what happens after that is you leave into this big world and you're expected to all of a sudden go into a job and be an adult. And it's really difficult to make that transition, like Mr. C was saying, to make that transition. But I think for me, what I realized pretty quick was I'm a creative person, but I don't really feel that a creative job is for me. And I think what that basically means is that I apply my creativity to the job that I'm in. So I don't have to be in a creative job to have that creative moment. And I think that was a key part for me when I first went into advertising, that I realized actually this is not the right place for me to be in, but I do know that I have got a creative mind and I can apply that creativity to no matter what job I go into. The other thing I think for me, just going back to what Mr. C was saying, was I'm not an extrovert by any stretch of the imagination. But one of the things that you can do if you want to have your voice heard is to create people around you who become your champions. They become the people that can speak for you. So if you're good at building relationships one-to-one, build those relationships one-to-one. Don't feel that you have to be in a room and stand up and be the biggest person in that room. You can do those relationships one-on-one. Those people will help carry you, and that idea of yours will eventually come out. So, don't be afraid to be the quieter one, the one that's a little bit shy. Use that, that sort of interpersonal relationship building one-to-one to get those champions around you who will help build you.
I mean, that's an incredible piece of advice and practical. Do you know what I mean? It's not just pie in the sky. It's good practical advice. As you were speaking there, I started thinking about the generosity that the four of you have got. I wonder how reflective that actually is in the creative industry. I don't know, because I've never really operated in I guess like in a team within an office or within an industry like that. But from an artistic point of view, I've definitely come across more than a handful of very selfish gatekeepers of, success or, the next stepping stone that you need. Because there's a massive amount of jealousy and insecurity amongst artists, and particularly stand-up comedians. No offense, see, because I know you're not one of them. But it's a very individualistic pursuit, isn't it? So it kind of makes sense. So I wonder if any of you have ever come up against a brick wall in your time, and what was your response? This goes out to anyone who's just got a story behind that. Maybe you haven't, which is fine. But there's been a lot of positivity, and a lot of the young people in here, when you go in, it was not all going to be positive stories all the time, is it? I mean, we've got to be real. There's a cutthroat element to everything within any
go on,
industry.
please, you, man, go on.
Yeah, I mean, quite early in my career, somebody said a great piece of advice, which is no is a good answer. And it basically means that you can argue against a no, right? Fuck off and die is a bad thing position. But no, you just kind of keep going till that no turns into a yes. I mean, that you can apply that to projects, you can apply that to relationships, whatever. But just that thing of, just keeping going until you can kind of make that thing work.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. There's Nils.
No, it's very similar. In the creative industry, there is massive fear around it was my idea. Ownership is a fracture in our industry. And for many, many years, myself included, there was this sense of, this is my idea, I wrote this. And you'll see it even next to award credits. You'll see names. And what I learned, though, is I had ideas like I'm sure a lot of you have that are in the bottom drawer, and you know they're fucking good, right? And what I learned was I was so scared of giving them to other people. I was like, well, if I tell them about it, they might go and do it. And then a couple of things happened in my career where I was like, the ones I had told other people about pushed those ideas closer to becoming reality. And it dawned on me that if all that really matters to creative people is being productive, is making and having your work out there, it struck me that the more people you actually tell, not the less, the more chance there is of that happening. And the moment I worked that out, man, I was like, I'm going to be the opposite. I'm going to trust the universe. I'm going to tell everybody about the great idea that we had, because sometimes someone goes, oh, you need to talk to. And you suddenly go, fuck. And then the thing happens.
It's a great lesson right there, Nils, in not being precious, I think. There's a lot of people who sit on this one idea. I had the idea for the glass toaster like 20 years ago. But I just sat on it, and then it came out. It actually came out. I had that idea, but I was just too I don't want to show anyone because someone's going to steal it. And then, of course, someone just came up with it. Whether it sold well is another question entirely.
I do have this other belief too, though. But your thing about when you have an idea, you're not the only one having it. Culture has a way of speaking.
Exactly.
Yeah,
have some respect for other people's intelligence.
Yeah, and if you imagine your idea, if someone said to you, I'll make you a deal, it will happen. If, say, God came down and he went, right, I'm going to make you a deal. Your idea can happen, but you have to share the credits. Would you really give a shit if it could happen?
Yeah.
That's the way you got to view it, I think.
Absolutely.
So the other thing I think is that if you have an idea, someone takes your idea, whatever, if you bang on about it, inevitably you become the problem. Yeah. Because you're the one talking about it. Everyone looks at the success of your idea rather than the fact that you're the sado whose idea got. Just have a bit of faith, like we have ideas continuously. Another one just drops in. Don't worry about it,
Interesting. Yeah. My brother wrote, I think he's a personal trainer, he wrote a sitcom about PTs and obviously gave it to his brother who's actually working in comedy. I said, yeah, I'll have a look at it. I read it. I was like, this is really funny. It's really funny. And I said, do you mind, I've got lots of people I can show it to. We can find maybe a little production company and develop it. He was like, who you taking it to? Who you taking it to? I was like, well, I got my one friend. He's like used to be at Channel 4. Now he's at the BBC. I'll start with him. And he's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't trust them TV companies. Like, bro, it's a TV company that's going to make it. Me and you can't make it. I've got to show it to someone. And it took him a good year, maybe 18 months to agree to let me show it around. And within 6 months, there was a TV show on TV about PTs. Now, he was amazingly upset. I said to him, you can't make a TV show and have it on TV in 6 months. They did not steal this idea from you. It's a great idea on a universal plane, and we took so long that another human being came up with the idea, you know? And let that be a lesson. Don't be precious. Get it out there, share it, you know? Otherwise, art means nothing.
And the other thing to that as well is don't wait for you to have all the answers to your idea of how you're going to do it. Start it. Because it's the same thing, literally, what a guy said to me as well. Like, literally, a couple of my comedy friends have come up with a concept, what they want to do, and they were like, yeah, let's get together and let's do this ourselves. Instead of taking it to the man, let's do it ourselves. And the advice what we've been given is literally, it's going to take you 12 to 14 months to do it yourselves, where you can just write a 2-page treatment and take it to production companies, and they will pay you to develop the idea. So again, it's understanding how to go about selling your idea, how to go about developing your idea in the best way for yourself and for that particular idea as well.
All right. Before we open it up to the audiences, I do want to give you guys a chance to ask some questions of this panel. There's a lot of knowledge here, a lot of years of knowledge. No offense to anybody's age.
Cold. Cold.
Let's rewind to that. I mentioned Yoda right at the start. Do any of you have like your like number one phrase that somebody said to you when you were on the come up, or maybe it was even recently that someone said to you, you just thought, that is a mantra to operate by in the creative world. It has a great metaphor for life, but in the creative industry, that's a great mantra to live by. Any of you have a go-to phrase, or was there a Yoda who passed one down to you? I'll open it up to everybody.
Well, this was probably my first week in an advertising agency, and I wrote a headline, and it was waffling on and on and on, and this bloke, who was my kind of creative group head, grabbed a piece of paper and a big marker pen, and he just wrote, he said, "You've been briefed to do a Piles advert. This is, do you bleed from the bum?" Right? And that was it. And it was stuck that thing up on the wall and said, just keep that in mind, right? Just kind of try to remember that you've got to compress the language, get to the point, and attract people's attention. So it's just sometimes, you know, you write something and it might wanders off. I occasionally refer back to, do you bleed from the bum, question mark.
That's handy. I like that. Esther?
My boss, Nick Jones, who's obviously the founder of Soho House, he has dyslexia, very severe dyslexia. And the one thing that he said to me was, simplicity is key. Everything you do, he said, if you could break it down and make it as simple as possible, think of me. He's like, if I can understand it, you know you've got a winner. And I think, you know, we spend so much time, and I know people, particularly in the advertising and the creative industry, spend a lot of time writing presentations and slides and decks and all of these things. And don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place for a deck. But if you can't say it in one slide and you can't say it in one sentence, then what is that about? So, you know, I always go back to Nick and just think of him and just think, you know, his key thing is simplicity. Everything you do should be super simple, super concise, super easy. And I've kind of lived by that, you know, and it helps me every day, every single day. I think, like, you know, if Nick was in this situation now, how would he make this problem, or how would he solve this problem and make it more simple?
It would be KISS, right? Or for Mick, it would be KSIS.
KS, yeah.
Dyslexic. Keep it simple, stupid. C or Nils, before we open it up, any classic mantra that...
I think for me, it's you know, from since I've becoming a mentor at School of Communication Arts, it's understanding the true essence of what being a creative is. Again, it's just that difference between understanding that if you're, you know, there's two sets of people. You're either a creative or you're a consumer. If you're a consumer, then, you know, that's all you do. You take other people's energy, you take other people's ideas, other people's beliefs. If you're a creative, then your job as a creative is to just share. It doesn't matter what people think about your work. It doesn't matter what people say about it. Your job is just to share it. And that's all. And whether people like it or not, that's not your business and that's not your concern. And once you accept that as a creative, you will always find work for yourself and you will always find joy in just sharing what you love.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
I got, like,
Nils, you got one?
Yeah, just two, obviously.
Two.
One is really quick, which is just, it dawned on me that the best people, you can eulogize all the terms in the world for skill and all that other stuff, but the best people make everyone around them better. That's what I've discovered. Mm-hmm. And that is about giving, and that is about sharing, and that is about your manner and how you appear in every room and every meeting. You will be bulletproof if you do that. Mm. If you make even your bosses better. If you have an idea for their company, and you lightly, without ferocity, just let it dance in front of them until they think it's theirs. That's a fucking skill. So don't be afraid of that as a power. The other one, you said something earlier which I think is kind of inflammatory, which is, we're not going to have those skills, they're not going to have those skills, they're old, right? And I think age is another thing in our game. The ad industry is one of the only industries where we are asking permission to get old inside our industry. The music industry doesn't. Nick Cave's not asking the music industry permission to get old. And I think my go at answering that is, if you think about all the apps you know how to use and the icons of those apps when you're 18, you'll have everything in there from Photoshop to Final Cut to Illustrator. And as you go up the career ladder, you find yourself using less and less. You think about the apps a CEO uses. Email.
LinkedIn.
Right. And I'm like, think about what that means. That means that person is then dependent on so many other people to go and make something. And so I think the way to bulletproof yourself, not just at an entry level, but all the way to the end, is to be able to make yourself. And you should seek people out for when they do something you can't do, not because you need them, because you want them. And I just think that's something we all forget a bit in our game. So
yeah, beautiful. For me, it's very short. My first year of doing stand-up, 2008, I'd been doing it for 8 months, and I was at the Edinburgh Festival, and they put me on a bill with 3 established comics. It was Tim Vine, there was Milton Jones, and there was Stephen K. Amos. And they wanted to have like one completely new kid. I was doing this thing called the Comedy Reserve for kids that had just started, like literally just started. So I get to do 5 minutes, and I was shitting myself in the dressing room. And Stephen K. Amos said to me, "You look nervous." I said, "I fucking am nervous, man. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I've forgotten everything I'm going to say." He goes, "Hey, just enjoy it." And then he went off, and I thought, what a fucking shit piece of advice. That doesn't make me feel any better. And I tell you what, 14 years later, 14 years in show business, that was the best piece of advice I ever got. Because when you enjoy what you do, you're better at it, and then other people can see that you're enjoying it, and they want in. And you can just keep creating, keep selling on that basis. So listen, let's open it up to the audience. I think we got
Sorry,
about
Doc, I
10
just want to
minutes.
say something.
Go on, sorry.
And that's so important what you've just said, because the fact at the time when somebody's giving you advice, it sounds like the worst type of advice ever.
Dude, please.
But sometimes the advice that you get at that moment is for later on in life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's how he showed his veteran status right there. Okay, we've got a roving mic, I think. Frankie, are you gonna do that? Okay, yeah. So hand up there in the middle.
Thanks so much for the conversation. That's been really interesting. I spend a lot of my time kind of coaching and developing young creatives and directors. And a big thing that comes up again and again is when people are pitched on a project and, 6 months, 8 months, 10 months later, kind of what you were saying earlier, Ben, about the PT creative their idea has come out in a slightly different iteration. And it's about giving people the confidence to keep going with original ideas and IP, but also how much of that is tied to the zeitgeist and creative trends, and how much of that is just people ripping other people off. And it's just that conversation around like the recycling of references. And yeah, like I have a lot of people come to me feeling very disheartened and very kind of downtrodden by that experience, and just some advice from you on how you would help people navigate that scenario.
Who is best placed to answer this? I think Esther, you should go for it.
I'm going to answer that only because I've recently experienced it. I think, Soho House, we launched a new membership 2 years ago. When we launched the membership, people within our own company hated it. And when I say hated it, I mean hated it. What? And I could see Max laughing. And the thing for me was I believed so strongly in that new membership that we were bringing out, and I believed so strongly in Nick's vision of what that membership should be, that what we ended up doing was we kicked out what Nick would call the treacle. All the other people that were involved in the decision-making, all the other people that were on the periphery, we got rid of them. And the two of us worked together to make this membership happen. The thing for me is if you've got a great idea and you strongly believe in it, find a way to make it happen. If you have to get rid of people along the way who are negative and taking away the positivity, remove them from the situation, get them out of the way, and find a way to make that idea happen. And sometimes, thriving off that negativity, so to take that and make that fuel you, because that could actually turn it around, right? So if someone's constantly saying to you, that's shit, that's shit, that's shit, you know what? You get angry and you're like, you know what? No, it's not. And I think sometimes you can use that negativity, you can use that raw power to actually fuel you to make it even better. And, for all those people that when we launched that membership 2 years ago who said, oh, it's never going to happen, and we now have 50,000 members around the world, that for me is like, it's validation that actually I was right and I did it, and they come crawling back. They do.
Brilliant. Do we have any others from the crowd? One at the back there, Frankie. Thanks.
Hi. How do you find motivation, and how do you get over things when you've been turned down for something or have been rejected from something?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge question. I think we probably all got opinions on that. Who gets rejected the most up here? I'd say it's got to be me as an actor. But,
yeah. Well, listen, acting comedy is all about rejection, isn't it? Really and truly. I mean, you've got to find that motivation within yourself, really and truly. And that's about knowing, exactly clearly what you want to do and understanding, like, I'll give you an example from a point of view of a stand-up comedian. Like, tonight I could do 2 gigs tonight. That first gig, I can absolutely storm it, kill it, then do exactly the same material in another room and die the death of 10,000 comics. Now, 2 things will happen to me. It's like, I say to myself, at the first show, was I funny? Did the audience think I was funny? Yes, they did. At the second show, did the audience think I was funny? No, they didn't. Question to myself, am I funny? The decision has to lie with me, not with the audience. So your motivation and what you're doing always has to lie with yourself. Never rely on somebody's yes or no to be motivated by it. That has to come from yourself. And know that, I'm good at what I do, and I'm gonna get rejection, I'm gonna get no's. That's part of life. And unfortunately, we're not taught that at school. We have to learn it through life experience. But the sooner you accept that and understand it, the more you'll start to enjoy what you do on a daily basis.
Absolutely. I've 14 years in show business for me, and I've definitely had more no's than yeses. But each yes leads to a job. So then that's 3 months or so of confidence for me before the next no. Do you know what I mean? And I think the most practical bit of advice I would give in terms of the bit of your question that really hit me right in the heart, like how do you motivate yourself every day? Like, just be careful in the mornings, because that's my biggest problem. Like, if I wake up and do the wrong thing, which in my opinion would be like checking Instagram, like I don't think that's a good morning activity. Do you know what I mean? If I turn my phone on now, it'll be to do a Wordle. You know why? Because that would just like switch my brain on and sort of get me ready for work. If I start my day the wrong way, when I'm in between jobs or whatever, I could write off the whole day. By lunchtime, I hate myself so much and think I'm such a worm who's never gonna get any work ever again. And then I'll turn on the TV and see some mixed race actor who's 20 years younger than me and think I'm fucking finished, that's it. It's so easy to start beating yourself up. So I say start your day with something that sort of makes you feel a bit good about yourself.
Can I lob one other thing in, which is in our game maybe, we pitch a lot. And that's the equivalent of asking permission to make your ideas.
Yeah.
And sometimes no can be a gift, and I mean that sincerely. If someone doesn't want what you do, you really have to ask yourself whether they really recognize what you do. In the first 2 weeks of Uncommon, we got a job from a big West Coast tech company, I won't say who. We were over the moon because we had a standing start. It was 250 grand. I was like, oh my fucking God, we're saved. Within a week, we were arguing and tearing lumps out of each other, and we resigned it because they didn't want to make the sort of work we were going to make. And the fear hit us, which was, are we about to go and make our first piece of work that's just going to be a massive pile of turd for a company everyone hates? And sometimes we talk ourselves into asking for permission, asking for validation, and we pitch, and someone says no, or we go for a job and someone says no. Inquire harder as to what that might have been, but remind yourself of your own worth. Gilbert and George have this fucking great quote, make the world to believe in you and to pay heavily for the privilege. You know? Don't worry about that shit.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with all of that, you know. And the only thing I would add is, if you've had lots of no's, when you finally do get that yes and it's successful, the satisfaction with all those no's that you got is just brilliant. You can dine out on that personally for a long, long time. Frankie, have we got time for another one? Or we got 5 minutes? Okay, great. We got time for another one. Over here by the pillar.
Hi, and thank you so much for sharing, sharing what you know with us. Thank you so much for that. My question is, everything that I've been hearing from you in the last 40 minutes was about sharing stuff outside of meetings, in coffee places, when, you're talking about nothing in particular. And I am struggling at the moment with the post-pandemic situation, which is remotely hybrid, coming back to the office. I am struggling myself to find those times to give my knowledge to others, because basically what I got is Zoom meetings that have a subject and have an agenda. So those moments of being able to relax and try to share something that I know are almost disappearing. What is your advice? How can we, our generation, try to spread what we know in the times of meetings and diaries and agendas, and no coffee and joy and fun and...
Sure. Well, I mean, Jay, we've not heard from for a little while, so I'm going to throw this one to you, but also I'm going to throw it to you specifically because you are someone who's done that for me over the course of the past few years, pulled me out of a funk that you probably didn't even know I was in, or just a lack of activity, and brought me into something that you just believe I'll be able to do, which I really appreciate, because not everybody does that. So let's spread some positivity here.
It's obviously been especially tough, and right now with hybrid working and the rest, it's like how do we kind of get things moving, because there's so much stuff happens outside of work that is work, and that's I do a lot of work with Soho House, mainly kind of producing events and stuff. But we kind of cooked up this idea with Esther, which I'm sure she'll expand on, which is Soho House want to open up their spaces so that experienced people can invite people in for drop-ins. So we can all put ourselves forward and invite young people in, or people who are struggling and they want to come and share, or
for actual one-to-ones.
Yeah, one-to-ones, or it can be small groups, but little workshops. Members of Soho House who are experienced and from the creative industries will be making themselves available in spaces that Esther is making making available all the way across London. And it's important. And the reason that we're doing this is because, young people are on kind of short contracts. There aren't as many people inside the office, less experienced people around. Sometimes you just want somebody to kind of look over your shoulder and just kind of point you in the right direction. I think it's a great question. It's a big problem, and I think that Esther will probably expand on it a bit. I know that that's something that Soho House are really keen to do.
I mean, don't get me started on hybrid working. I mean, I work in hospitality. I'm in the servicing industry. You can't do that from home. And I'm not saying there's not a time and a place to be at home, but I do believe that, like Jay was saying, it's not just about the workplace and being in an office for work. It's about the social that goes around the work. It's about going for a drink after work when you've had a shitty day. It's like, going to moan to your friends at work after you've had a pitch that's gone horribly wrong. For me, those moments, you can't replace those moments. And I think, as part of Soho House, what we wanted to do was create a membership that was actually more accessible. And it kind of almost goes against what membership is about, because people think that membership is about exclusivity. My belief for membership is that actually it should be accessible, and it's about connecting people. Membership is about meeting other people that think like you, that have the same sort of values, and that are genuinely just nice people. And the spaces that we are opening up now all around the world as part of a new membership called Soho Friends are especially created off the back of the pandemic to ensure that young creatives, age doesn't have to come into it, that people that have a creative mind can come together, work together, socialize together, and they may not work in the same industry, but they can still find things in common and learn from these people. So, the key thing for me is trying to find those places. So my advice to you is, get out there, find those places, even if it's meeting up with a group of people from work to go and work in one of those spaces for an afternoon. I met a group from Google who are using our Brixton studio. They meet there every Friday because they all work from home. They've all been brought together to do this project, and they use our Brixton studio space for the full day to make this project happen. Being in that space, not only have they sort of interacted with each other, but they've met lots of other amazing people coming into that Brixton studio space, and now the collaboration has gone even wider than we would ever expected. So, make the time to get out of the house, please, 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 I'm begging you, because if you don't, you're going to miss those moments.
Absolutely,
you really will.
And then you got that opportunity for further opportunity is out there. Now, a lot of these panels tend to have a lot of hogwash going back and forth, and it's all very nice and friendly, but it's all a bit pie in the sky and abstract. We actually ended there with practical advice and solutions. Like, you could actually go to these places and meet people and take your career to the next step. So for that reason and many more, please show your appreciation for Nils, Esther, Mr. C, and Jay. Thank you for your great questions. Thank you for your attention. Enjoy the rest of the festival. Take care.